Welcome to Crafted Sweetly. In this video, I will show you how to achieve a stained glass effect when making cards. I will show you how to achieve that using both a Cricut, if you have one, and if not, die cuts. Both ways, the results are really stunning. The first die cut will be using the Card Making Magic set of dies, and this comes with a lot of different components. I'm using some of them to create the front panel of the card. So I have some black cardstock, and then that one is folded already, ready for a card. To make sure that the die does not cut through both sides of the paper, I am putting the hard plate in between the card basically, and then I will put the card on top. I just don't want it to cut completely through. And I will also need one more back panel, so I'm putting in 2 plates. You'll see this later. I will use some removable tape to hold this in place so it doesn't shift. And then I will continue to put the rest of the dies that I plan on using for this card, and I'm adding the removable tape to each of the components so that they stay in place. You don't want these to shift as they're going through the die cutting machine. I will be using a Gemini Junior to cut these. I love this Gemini Junior just because it's so powerful and it just goes through really nice. After that, I do the magnetic sheet and then the other hard plate. On the back side, I am putting the plastic shimmy just so that the card does not get caught in the machine itself. Once you've run it through the machine, you will have all the pieces you need for this. So again, I have the shimmy and then your card. And as you can see, all the components are separate, but we will attach these as we build a card. We will reconstruct the die cuts back into the panels. The Gemini Junior does such a nice job with cutting out all the little tiny pieces that you really don't need to do much weeding. There may be just a few pieces that did not fall out, but everything is pretty cut. We also need to cut one more layer of vellum, and this is the part that we will be using to create stained glass effect. This will be just the outline of the design. So we do need to remove this edge, and I will just use an X-Acto knife to cut right along the score line of the card because I don't want the extra piece. So just cut off right along the score line on both sides. And now you're left just with the front panel. You can run a boning tool along the edge just so that make sure that the score line folds in nicely. Now we need to add the vellum paper to the intricate dies. And we're sandwiching the vellum between 2 sets of die cuts. So if you remember when we cut out the card, I inserted just a plain additional black cardstock. That was going to be the other side of the sandwich of with the vellum. I'm using some art glitter glue because for intricate dies, this is really great glue. It dries clear. And I'm just going to attach the vellum to the die cut and then build the rest of the die cut on the other side. But I just want something to adhere, a backing to it. And now you can insert the additional pieces right into the center. So again, some art glitter glue, and you can inlay these pieces to the design. Once you have all your pieces in, we need to do the same thing to the back once we color it. So the next step would be coloring everything. I'm using Spectrum Noir markers, and the markers do have a fine tip and then a wide tip, but with our work we'll just be using the fine tip for everything because of the intricate designs. As you can see, the coloring does not have to be perfect because we're going to put the other piece of cardstock that's been die cut right on top of this. So the only visible portion will be where there is no die cut. So as long as you color the white area, if you run over where the die cut is, doesn't matter because you won't be able to see it once we glue the die cut to it. So we've colored everything in and left no white spaces. And now we're going to glue this portion onto the backing. As you can see, the edging is slightly trimmed off, which is fine because we're going to add a little black border right to the edge there. So that's fine. So now we're just going to align everything to make sure that it fits properly. To cover the little unfinished edge, I'm just going to add a little skinny strip to it. You won't necessarily need to do this with other designs, but with this one, since it wasn't finished, it didn't quite cut properly when I ran it through the Gemini, I'm adding this to give it a finished look. I will add a piece of white cardstock to the inside so that the person writing the message has some white area to write on versus the black cardstock. The next die cut is another Card Making Magic die set, and this one will make a rectangular card. It's meant for the box as well, and it has a lot of embellishments, but I did like the pattern in this, so I decided to make a rectangular card instead. As you can see, this die set, and for all of the supplies that I'm using, you can check the description below for where I got these, but it does have a lot of dies, so you can make lots of different projects with it. So I've cut out all the components for this card, and I have the 2 die cuts, the vellum, which is going to be sandwiched between the 2 die cuts, and then the backing for the card. Same process, we're going to have to glue the vellum to the front of the card, and then we'll be using the Spectrum Noir pens markers to color in the design. Same idea as with the other card. Once you have everything colored in, we need to attach this to the back of the card. So for the card, I added some white cardstock again. It makes the design show up better. And then I will use a crocodile to make a couple of holes where I will insert some eyelets. I have lots of different colors of eyelets, and I will add holes right on the edge. So I'll punch the hole on both ends, and then that's where I will insert the eyelet. Once you have the 2 holes, we're going to use the same tool, the crocodile, to set the eyelets. So we just insert the eyelet, and then the tool does have the crimping portion of it. So that's the part that we're using to crimp the eyelet into place. I did mark the edge of the card with a couple of score lines so that the card opens up nicely versus just trying to bend it open. So you can just use your scoring tool to put a line down the edge of the card. That way it opens up much easier. So as you can see, there is the card using another die cut. I did decide to add a sentiment to this, so I'm using the Alt New stamp set, and again there's a link below for that. And with my Misty stamping tool, I can make sure that the stamp itself is nicely aligned, and if it doesn't ink properly, I can go back and ink it again. I will cut this into a couple of strips and layer it so that it has a little bit of dimension. And if you add some foam squares to it, it will give it some additional dimension and it's not flat on the card. So there is a stained glass effect card, but it's rectangular instead of the other design. Now this one is done with a Cricut, so I cut out the mandala with a Cricut, and then same idea. We need 2 die cuts, and these are attached, which I did as a welding technique in Cricut Design Space. You can see some of my other videos for instructions on how to weld projects. I'll score this area so that it folds properly. So the vellum will get sandwiched again between 2 identical die cuts. For this I am using still art glitter glue, but it's a finer tipped dispenser little bottle, squeeze bottle, because the cuts are so intricate and so fine. I think directly from the art glitter glue bottle, I would end up getting too much glue. So with this I can get pretty much as fine as a pencil. So just line up the vellum onto the die cut, and then we need to do the coloring again using the spectrum markers. Once you've colored everything, the entire design, then we do need to add the other die cut on top of it. So because it's a black cardstock, I added another layer of white cardstock so that the person can write their message. And we're going to attach this to the vellum, the back side of the vellum. As you can see, the stained glass effect can have some really amazing results with the card. So you can come up with mandalas, you can come up with some other designs, you can do animals with the same idea. Pretty much any design you can do using this, as long as you sandwich the vellum between 2 identical die cuts or Cricut cuts. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can achieve some really cool designs. If you have any questions, comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and share. I look forward to seeing your projects. Join us on our Crafted Sweetly group page. Thanks so much, and see you next time.